Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jam Vishnu Paramahaṁsa Paramahaṁsa Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Ashtotara Shatashi Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnavarinda Ki Jai Nama Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sakaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktivinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shamakun Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavadam Ki Jai Navadvip Dham Ki Jai Ganga Yamunamai Ki Jai Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Sri Prabhupada. Big girl. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th canto, prescribed duties for mankind. Chapter 16, King Chitraketu meets the Supreme Lord. Text 47. Oh, 46, but the 47 has a purport. All right, so we're doing 46 and 47. All right, if everybody could please repeat after me. Viditam Ananta Samastam Tava Jagad Atmano Janar Iha Charitam Igapyam Parama Guroha Kiyad Eva Savitor Eva Kadyotai. Would you like to chat? Okay. Slowly.
Viditam ananta samastam Tava jagat atmano janari charitam Vigyapyam padamagoro Kiyediva savitodeva kadyotai Viditam ananta samastam Tava jagad atmano janari charitam Vigyapyam padamagoro Kiyediva savitodeva kadyotai Viditam ananta samastam Tava jagad atmano janari charitam Vigyapyam padamagoro Kiyediva savitoriva kadyotai
Karnamrita? Okay. Govardhan, then Karnamrita. Word by word, Viditam, well known. Ananta, oh unlimited. Samastam, everything. Tava, to you. Jagat Atmanaha, who are the super soul of all living entities. Janai, by the mass of people, or all living entities. Iha, within this material world. Acharitam, performed. Vigyapyam, to be informed. Paramaguroho, to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Master. Kiya, how much? Eva, certainly. Savatu, to the sun. Eva, like. Kadyotai, by the fireflies. Translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, HG Bhakti Swami Prabhupada. O unlimited Supreme Personality of Godhead, whatever a living entity does in this material world is well known to you, because you are the Super Soul. In the presence of the sun, there is nothing to be revealed by the light of a glowworm. Similarly, because you know everything, in your presence there is nothing for me to make known. Text 47. My dear Lord, you are the creator, maintainer, and annihilator of this cosmic manifestation, but persons who are too materialistic and who always see separateness do not have eyes with which to see you. They cannot understand your real position, and therefore they conclude the cosmic manifestation is independent of your opulence. My Lord, you are the Supreme Pure, and you are full in all six opulences. Therefore I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Purport. Atheistic men think that the cosmic manifestation has come about by chance, by a combination of matter without reference to God. Materialistic so-called chemists and atheistic philosophers always try to avoid even the name of God in relation to the cosmic manifestation. For them, God's creation is impossible to understand because they are too materialistic. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is paramahaṁsa, or the Supreme Pure. Whereas those who are sinful, being very much attached to material sense enjoyment, and therefore engage in material activities like asses, are the lowest of men. All their so-called scientific knowledge is null and void because of their atheistic temperament. Thus they cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Om Gadatavarandasya Kananjana Shalakaya Chakshulan Vaditamena Tasmai Shri Gravena Mahamakam Karitavachalam Pangam Langa Etigirim Yak Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurundi Tarinam Vancha Koptari Brishta Kripa Sindhabevicha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Before we discuss verses and purport, I'd just like to read this brief. This is in relation to month of Purushottama. This is the month of Purushottama we're in case you haven't heard that or realized it. So I'll just read a little something about this month. This is some words from His Holiness Giraj Swami about this particular month. We are entering the sacred month of Purushottama, so it started Tuesday, last Tuesday, which comes once every 3 years and is said to be 3 times more potent than Kartik. And everybody knows about Kartik, all the devotees know about Kartik, and they do extra service and try to, right? Some devotees go to Vrindavan to spend a month there because it says more benefit, right? So this is 3 times more potent than Kartik. During this month, devotees increase their chanting and hearing, and in particular, they read chapter 15 of the Bhagavad Gita, Purushottama Yoga, daily. Just 20 verses, actually, this 15th chapter. If you read the Sanskrit and the English, it may take 8 minutes, and if you read the English, it may take 5 minutes. I guess it depends how fast you read, but it doesn't take long, and a lot of benefit. In a previous age, during the Purushottama month, Kaundinya Muni repeatedly chanted the following mantra, mantra every day throughout the sacred Adhika Mas. And this is the mantra this particular Muni would chant it every day. Govardhana Daram Vande Gopalam Goparupinam Gokulotsavam Ishanam Govindam Gopika Priyam. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, who lifted the Govardhan hill. He is the maintainer and protector of the cows. He assumed the form of a cowherd boy and performed various transcendental pastimes. He is the great joy and grand festival of Gokul. He is the supreme controller and master of everything and everyone. He gives pleasure to the cows and the senses. He is the beloved of the cowherd damsels of Vrindavan. So that's the verse. The scriptures state that by chanting this mantra 33 times every day with devotion during the Purushottama month, one will attain the mercy of Sri Purushottama Sri Krishna and attain the fulfillment of all of their spiritual desires. So that's something about Purushottama, month of Purushottama. Another thing is that there's some instance of Srila Prabhupada during Purushottama month. Again, we have entered auspicious Purushottama month, which is considered 3 times more powerful than Kartik. One year, Srila Prabhupada was in Juhu during Purushottama Adhika Mas, and Dr. C.P. Patel, Srila Prabhupada's regular companion on his morning walks on Juhu Beach, prevailed upon him to take bath in the sea. In an article published in Back to Godhead, Dr. Patel wrote, "Every 3rd year, an extra month is inserted into the lunar calendar to bring it into line with the solar calendar. As per astronomical calculations, 1 year sacred Shravana was the month that came twice. The first month of the double month is called Purushottama Mas, and the devotees of Lord Krishna observe it by fasting, praying, and reading Srimad Bhagavatam. The last day of this month was Somavati Amavasya, a very auspicious occasion. On this day, all religious people take a bath in the early morning in the sea, or in a river or sacred lake. I propose that on that auspicious day, Srila Prabhupada take a dip in the sea along with me and the others. He agreed at once. We all planned to go to the sea with extra clothes, take a bath, and change. He accompanied us. But just near the edge of the water, someone suggested that he not take a bath in the sea, since he had a coronary episode some time back. So he halted then and there and would not enter the water. He pondered for a while and then suddenly asked me to bring some water in my palm and pour it on his head. He said, that is as good as a bath on this auspicious day."
So a little water from the ocean.
Yeah. Very intelligently, he found the means, and I obliged him. He was pleased. I touched his feet and felt satisfaction at having taken a bath in the sea with him on a very auspicious day. So, anyways, that's... So in this particular verse, this is in purport, some of the prayers of Chitraketu. These are the two. He's glorifying Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Super Soul, within all living entities. So there's us, the soul, we're inhabiting particular bodies, and then there's the super soul. And the super soul, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, he is Mata Smritir Ganam Apohanamcha. He's giving knowledge, he's giving remembrance, forgetfulness. If we want to remember Krishna, he'll help us do that. And if we want to forget Krishna, he'll help us do that also. Based on our particular desire. So he's mentioning, Chitraketu Maharaj is mentioning that in the presence of the sun, there's nothing to be revealed by the light of a glowworm. So the sun's there, okay, and then you have a little glowworm. There's no comparison in terms of light. So he's saying, similarly, because you know everything, in your presence there's nothing for me to make known. So he's saying you know everything. So I don't need to make anything known to you. And then he glorifies him as the creator, maintainer, annihilator of this cosmic manifestation. So this is where seems to be largely a lot of the people's conception of God, that he's the annihilator, he's the maintainer, and he's the creator. And after that, we don't know. And it may seem that he doesn't have much of a life. Whereas, because if I was to say, okay, well, Madhavapuri, he's the creator of this house. He created it. He's maintaining it, right? Or a house. He's maintaining it. And then in due course of time, he destroyed it. And that's Madhavapuri. I want you to love Madhavapuri now, right? On the basis of that knowledge. It doesn't really give any really idea of who Madhavapuri is. It doesn't mention anything about his likes, what type of prasadam he likes, or what type of prasadam he doesn't like, what he looks like, his sense of humor, or whatever it may be. We lived for many years together, actually, in the same room. We were roommates. I don't know how many years was it we were roommates for? Yeah, 4 years. So it doesn't give a sense. But if I tell him, okay, well, this is what he looks like, this is who his parents are, this is his history, this is how he came to Krishna consciousness. We invited him to India, actually. Remember that? When he was going to SDSU, we invited him to India. He came, and then I think shortly after he joined the temple. So similarly, if we just say, oh, Krishna or God, he's the creator, he's the maintainer, he's the destroyer. Okay, case closed. You're like, all right, well, I'm not really interested. People say, oh, I'm more interested in the relationships of this world. That's one of the problems with Mayavad or impersonalism, is that they paint such a bleak picture of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And people are like, well, I'm more interested in what's going on in this. I'm more interested in what's going on in Pacific Beach. Right? Who cares about Godhead or anything like that? So that's a problem with impersonalism. Because they say that God has no eyes, he has no senses, there's no relationships, right? There's no rasa, there's no that pleasure of relationship. So that's the picture they paint. And again, people think, okay, I don't want anything to do with that. And they go from materialism. But then he says, persons who are too materialistic and who always see separateness do not have eyes with which to see you. So we can have eyes that see Krishna, or we could have eyes that don't see Krishna, based on the training, or based on the consciousness. Because our consciousness, we see things, but one person and another person may see them completely differently, based on their consciousness. Like somebody who's really into making money, they see things differently than somebody who doesn't really care about that. Like Prabhupada had one disciple, Garga Mani. Prabhupada nicknamed him that. He was the treasurer of the LA temple, one point. Yeah, Gardner Money. So, and he helped start the spiritual sky incense and this, that. But anyways, he by inclination, he had that nature, to make money. Devotees say that, they still go to his apartment in Vrindavan. They have a hard time walking out without buying something, He's selling a CD or a book or whatever it might be, right? So he's someone like that they see differently than someone who just doesn't care about that or doesn't think that way. Like some person who doesn't think that way, they're just thinking about making the Sunday feast amazing. And like the prices are just, they practically don't exist. How much something cost, etc. Let's just make it nice, right? Whereas somebody who's into making money, saving money, they say, all right, well, let's buy like the cheapest possible thing. And anyways, you get the idea. Cabbage ki jai. So based on their consciousness, they see a particular way. So we could train our consciousness to see in a particular way. And it's actually important that devotees do that. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he said that every day when we get up in the morning, we should remind ourselves, do not be anxious to find fault with others, and declare thyself a true bona fide bhakta. And he writes, which thou art not. You should tell ourselves that. And he says there is a saying to the effect that always. Anyways, he goes into a song by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, where Bhaktivinoda Thakur is painting a particular picture of himself, which some people, the self-esteem movement, wouldn't appreciate much. Kind of a lowly, humble conception of himself, and making the point that who am I to find faults with anybody, and I should be concerned with my own self. And he said such behavior of whatever, pointing finger, it says such behavior is not the behavior of preachers, but of deceitful people. That's what he says. So anyways, but it's a way of training ourselves that, okay, this is what Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur is saying. So we're training our mind, you could say, how to see things properly. Also reading helps do that. Shastra Chakshu. Reading, hearing scripture. Because if we hear and read scripture, that's our reference point, right? We look at something and we say, oh, what does scripture say about that, right? Whereas if we just read and hear something, or whether if we just look at something and then we don't have any scriptural reference, hearing or reading, then we just look from our own, or what society, growing up has pushed on us, using materialistic mindset. So we could train our mind. It's important. Of course, the most important thing in relation to seeing Krishna or experiencing or realizing Krishna's presence in our lives is by purification. Tapo divyam putraka yena sattvam. Through divine austerity comes purification. That's the most important thing. So he's saying here that they cannot see because they don't have the eyes. They cannot understand your real position. And therefore, they conclude that the cosmic manifestation is independent of your opulence. Now they say, oh, there's no God. There's no Krishna. My Lord, you are the supreme pure, and you are full in all six opulence. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. So Srila Prabhupada says in the purport, atheistic men, they conclude that the cosmic manifestation has come about by chance, combination of matter without reference to God. Materialistic so-called chemists and atheist philosophers always try to avoid even the name of God. And they can't understand because they're too materialistic. Krishna covers their vision. And they're attached to material sense enjoyment, and Krishna says, right, Namam Duskritana Mudha Prapadyante Naradama, that there's 4 different types of classes of people who don't surrender to Krishna, and he doesn't speak too highly of them. Srila Prabhupada would say, when he would quote this verse, he would say, I'm not saying, and Krishna's saying, so don't get mad at me. I'm just repeating, what Krishna's saying. but it's a strong language, like mudha. Mudha means like a donkey, right? Beast of burden, doesn't surrender, Krishna. So there's different arguments. Mukunda Charna Prabhu, he went last night to a meeting with one person named Gokul. He's an Indian fellow. Gokul is the place, right, within this world where Krishna performed his past. Gokul, yeah. So I was saying if he gets initiated, it'd be very easy, right? Gokul Chandra, Gokul Ananda, right? Easy name. Anyway, so Mukunda Charna Prabhu went over there, and Gokul invited him. He's been coming to the lounge. And Gokul invited him to meet with some of his friends. You know, some theists, some atheists, some speculators, some agnostics, right? Confused. Yeah. So Mukunda Charna Prabhu was telling me, what do you think, I should go over there? And I said, yeah, I think it's good, because they probably don't have much experience of a Hare Krishna person. And it's good if you go over there and try to, represent and also be good for Gokul to help him develop his faith more. So I'm sure they presented all different types of arguments. What were some of the arguments they?
Well, they most went after the Christian, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, well, most of the arguments were against Christianity. So it was kind of, I think it ended up feeling like game.
There was one Christian there. One Hare Krishna and some agnostics and atheists. So Mukunda Charna Prabhu was saying that it was mostly against the Christian. So he felt that he was getting ganged up upon. Huh?
I mean, they had arguments against the idea of karma seeming inconsistent, but yeah, that's because they had misconceptions about how karma works and reincarnation works and so on.
So they were accepting to a lot of your ideas, or the ideas.
Yeah, they didn't have much of a problem with that conception, I think, mostly with.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you see these people like attack religion, a lot of the times they're attacking. A lot of the times they're attacking the concept of God, or the Christian concept of God specifically, about like hell and brimstone, fire and brimstone. Why brimstone? Volcanic rock? Oh, it's a hot rock. Okay, I see. Oh, burning rock falling from the sky. Sounds very scary, huh? So, they usually attack this conception of God. If you see all these, professional atheists, they attack these conceptions of God, and they don't really go for Krishna so much. I mean, sometimes they do, but a lot of them go for this, the Christian concept of God, which we also, disagree with. This particular conception of hell, eternal damnation of the soul. And as I was mentioning the other day about this particular pastime of Putana, she came to kill Krishna, and in a lot of people's conceptions of God, I mean, there's no question where she's going. She's going to hell forever for what she tried to do. But we see the conception, or we see Krishna. What does he do? He takes her back to the spiritual world. Wow, that's quite amazing, right? She's a demoness who literally goes around and kills babies. And as Judah Prabhu says, drinks their blood. So I mean, how much lower can an individual go? I don't know. I mean, we don't have to think about it right now. But anyways, Krishna, he liberated her. He purified her, liberated her. So quite amazing. And therefore the Bhagavatam saying is, how can I surrender to anyone more merciful than Krishna? Uddhava is saying. Because one thing that's brought up is that sometimes people ask you, why did you become a devotee, right? Now there may be different reasons why someone becomes a devotee. It's an interesting question, right? Why did you become a devotee? And generally all the devotees have some story, right? Some longer than others. I mean, some devotees, they tell like a really long story. Like we had one brahmachari here. I like bringing him to places because, sometimes I don't like to talk, believe it or not, but so I'd bring this brahmachari, and if I wasn't feeling like talking, I would say, "Hey, ask him to tell him your story. Ask him to tell him your story." So you tell the story, and it's like, all right, I could just sit back and hear because it's a long story. A lot of the times he wouldn't finish it, even in one meeting. It'd be like a couple meetings. So that's one thing. How did you become a devotee? But another thing is, why did you remain a devotee after all these years? Because if one sticks around 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, an interesting question would be, well, why did you remain a devotee? Right? Because you could have done something else. So they asked His Holiness Tamal Krishna Goswami this. Why did you remain a devotee? And you know what he said? Does anyone want to take a guess? Or maybe maybe you've heard him say it? Or any guesses why one would want to remain, or why one would remain a devotee? One thing he said was, one is that, I've been doing this so long and I just can't change now. It's just, which was, anyways, that was one thing. But another thing he said, the reason I stayed a devotee is because our conception of God. That's what kept me as a devotee. That's one of the reasons. I mean, of course, there could be many reasons, but I'm sure there's many reasons why he stayed a devotee besides that. But he was saying in this particular occasion that because he was mentioning Krishna, right? If you read about Krishna, the mercy of Krishna, the kindness of Krishna, how wonderful Krishna is. And also about Lord Chaitanya also. And you read about Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It's very attractive concept. Yeah. So with these particular atheistic people or materialistic people, you could say some of them may be ignorantly innocent, but some of them may be on like a mission to destroy religious sentiments or to destroy any type of sense of obligation, morality, or responsibility of the human being. In other words, because there's no purpose, because there's no reason behind anything or purpose behind anything, no karma, no reincarnation, no life after death. So in other words, you could just do whatever you want. You're not answering to anybody. So whatever makes you, whatever floats your boat. So we say whatever floats your boat within reason, because all this is very unreasonable. So devotees should, you could say, ask questions, know their arguments, know what they are presenting. So one is that they could be strong themselves. Strong in the sense that they won't be swayed by all these mundane conceptions. Like materialistic atheists, they say practically they're trying to destroy the family structure, which is you could say very important within religion or religious circles, the family structure, because they're thinking about society bringing in God-conscious children and so on. Now you just destroy that, and so they're trying to destroy that, trying to destroy this, trying to destroy so many things, and you get a big mess. Everybody's just doing what they want, and what they want is not right. Yeah, I said it. And it's a big mess. So what do we say to somebody? I was speaking with one devotee, and this point was being brought up, and what do we say? Because a very common thing people say nowadays, one, just forgetting about family, structure, or what. One of the things they say is, why on earth would you want to bring somebody into this world? That's like, you're wrong. That's sick. In other words, why would you want to give birth to a child? It's so terrible. But all the Vedic literature says grihastha ashram, it means bringing children into the world. So how are we supposed to, what would we say? Does anybody have okay, Mr. Yes. You could bring the mic to your.
That being born in a devotee household is probably the best way to go back home, back to Godhead.
All right, so you're saying that, okay, it's a terrible world, but as families, they could bring a child into this world, and they could train them and bring them back to the spiritual world. All right. So, all right, that's one. Any other?
If there is any hope for the world, it lies in the devotees. In other words, preaching the devotee, the lifestyle, simple living, high thinking, and therefore, it's a responsibility is to bring forth the next generation and train them up nicely so they can at least try to save the world. You have to kind of disagree and say there is some hope because God can do anything. Yeah. So if we spread Krishna consciousness, then it can reverse all this craziness and like that.
Mm-hmm.
My dad used to say this, because I used to be one of those, exactly what you were saying, Balaram Prabhu, like, oh, why would you want to bring a child into the world? And my dad actually used to say this all the time, because he always wanted me to have like 8 brothers and sisters. I don't. But he said, yeah, you bring the right people into the world, and then you'll make it better. And he didn't know anything about Krishna consciousness, but still, it's like.
It turned out pretty good.
Oh.
You got you.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. So even without that, like, he didn't necessarily know the right way, the right thing to do. But yeah, he still had that same concept of bring the right people into the world, and then you make it better, and that's better than not having kids.
Yeah. One thing is these people end up having children anyways, in the form of, anyone want to say? Dogs. Anyways, but that's you could say, anyways, I'm not saying it's just an interesting point. I'm not saying that's an argument, but.
The burning desires don't cease.
Yeah.
And therefore there's the soul. So better get ahead of the curve and know how to raise a child, train a child.
Well, what I was going to say is pretty much covered by Jodhpur and Jalatala Mataji, but they don't have the idea that the reason, or maybe they're lacking the idea that the reason the world is such a mess and so many horrible things are going on is because of Varnasankara. The people being born to the world who are unwanted, they aren't conceived properly and they aren't raised properly. And so, as Jodhpur was saying, like the counter, the force against that would be actually having properly conceived and raised children. Yeah. And then also they have a misunderstanding of who these souls are. Like they disappear because I conceived them or something. Our whole idea is that there are souls already deserving to come into to appear in Kali Yuga. It's just a matter of are they going to have spiritual guidance along with their, material suffering and enjoyment that they're already, destined to have according to their previous karma.
Yeah.
So you aren't giving them more or less material enjoyment or pain than they're already, have determined by their own previous actions. You're just giving them the spiritual guidance.
Yeah.
Also, one last thing is, we could even go the route of agreeing with them that it would be just to have a children because you want one, to bring a child in this world because you want one, would be wrong. We would agree with that, and that's what seems like that's kind of the angle some people say, it's selfish to have a child. And in this day and age would be selfish because you do it for your enjoyment, but the kid would suffer so much, and what about 50 years from now and so on. And so in one sense you could take the route, we agree, just to have a child for your own enjoyment would be selfish. It's only because you're taking on as a responsibility that there's so much suffering in the world, let me, counteract that by raising some people or helping some people, guiding some people properly.
Yeah. Thank you.
Did you have an additional idea?
I was just thinking now, and I do that sometimes. That, all of these points are definitely points I was thinking and considering. That's for sure. I was also thinking that we don't subscribe to. I guess it's a good word to use nowadays, right? Subscribe, because people subscribe to so many things. We don't subscribe to these people's ideas at all. I mean, to say at all, because some of them fall in line with Krishna consciousness. So you could say you could take gold from a filthy place. So we subscribe to Krishna's ideas in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Gita, and Krishna has a whole system. Krishna says that people have natures, people have... So in other words, to go against, to pretty much follow this philosophy, we're not really following Krishna's system, because Krishna doesn't accept that. Krishna says that, okay, there's... One is that if somebody wants to enter family life and do that, then okay, then they should raise Krishna conscious children. That's part of it. That's just part of the system. And if one doesn't do that, if they they don't go that route, right? Then they should dedicate themselves fully to Krishna and spreading Krishna consciousness. So therefore the brahmacharya ashram, right, it's for training, it's for education, and it's for learning how to dedicate oneself fully to the spiritual master and Krishna. And then householder life, it's okay, bringing children into the world and doing all that, and being Krishna conscious, and charity and purification, and right, that's there. And then vanaprastha life, very good. We have our Yamunapati Prabhu. He's very happy. He's retiring soon, 65 years old, and he wants to be more involved in, different aspects of the temple and so on. So, and also Karnamrita, right? You're like retired, right? Pretty much. Yeah, kind of. So it's good. It's, vanaprastha ashram. It's important because, again, you're dedicating, yourself fully to the activities of Krishna consciousness responsibilities. And then you have this, and then you have the sannyas ashram, which is also important. We can't, Prabhupada didn't want that to die. He wanted the sannyas ashram to remain strong and alive. So that's also important. Not everybody has to do that, but it is an option. And it's also there to, dedicate oneself fully. So, all right, does anybody have any question or comment about anything? Yes.
Well, I have another reason for kids.
Okay.
It's another reason for kids. And you were saying we don't subscribe to their view.
Yeah.
This doesn't discount, having children to make the world a better place by, there's a Garbhadan Sanskara, you attract a, at the time of conception, you attract a great soul, and then you train that person how they can actually help the world. So you're bringing in light into the world. and giving, there's all the arguments that have already been said. Yes, there's an additional one, and we don't subscribe to the view that this world is a horrible, bitter, miserable, grit your teeth and just hope you die early. Or like the French existentialists, the only question is whether to commit suicide and how.
Yeah.
Who's my favorite
How to
guy?
do it.
No, that's Camus. But brutish, brief, and what was it? And beastly, that's life. Brutish.
Something in short.
Brutish, short, and beastly. We don't subscribe to that world. That the devotees, an actual someone who's Krishna conscious, it's a very happy life.
Yeah.
It's not a naive life, but it's a very happy life. Krishna's the light and the sun and the moon.
Yeah.
We feel so, genuine friendship.
Yeah.
So to be raised as a devotee, then it's not a bitter, profane, horrible world.
Yeah.
It's a sweet life.
Yeah.
So that's just an additional reason.
Oh, yeah. Very good. Thank you. Yeah.
It's not nasty, brutish, and short.
Nasty.
Hobbes, Thomas Hobbes.
Oh, God. That guy seemed unhappy. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, right? Dukkhalayam ashashvatam. It's temporary abode full of suffering. So it's interesting. He says that, right? It's like stamped. Now, Prabodhananda Saraswati, great devotee of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, says the one who gets a sidelong glance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he gives many benefits of that. But one thing he says is for that devotee, they say Vishram Purna Sakayate, means the whole universe is just full of happiness. Wherever they look, it's just full of happiness. So in other words, for a devotee, as Bhajanarayan Swami is saying, that if someone's trained as a devotee and they are a devotee, it's be full of happiness. That's a good point. And also you have, one thing is that Bhaktivinoda Thakur specifically prayed for a ray of Vishnu. And who came? Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He changed the world. And then you have Srila Prabhupada. So who changes the world? People. Trees. Another thing I was thinking is it helps remove selfishness. It squeezes that tendency to be selfish out of a person when somebody has children.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
When all you want to do is go to bed, and 2 o'clock in the morning, wakes up with an ear infection, and you got to walk him, get him back to bed, or take him to the hospital.
Yeah, so it's a good training, because one has to be selfish and their life. So you get training as a brahmachari, and then some people go to grihastha, and that's training more further, right? Squeezing selfishness out. So it's also there. It's also another reason. Oh, yeah.
Can I throw in another example on that?
Yeah.
When I was married,
Kids got raised, did all my duty and all that. But in my household, I was driving back. We did some home program at a nice Indian family's home. And there was me, Dharma Setu, and let's say Jamunapati, and then 3 other brahmacharis. And they gave everybody a little something, It actually wasn't a little something. I think they gave everybody $100. So the brahmacharis, when we got in the car, looked in their envelope. Hey, $100, that's nice. One devotee says, I'll put it towards my fund to go to India. Another brahmachari said, I wanted to buy this book or this, I wanted, They were going to spend it on something for their own spiritual satisfaction. And I remember just looking at the householders. We're never going to see that money. That money goes to pay for the kids' shoes or a new bicycle or pay the house. You're not seeing that money. You're working all day long, and then that money just goes right into the bottomless pit of family expenses. Not to scare anybody off, but I'm just saying. So it is a self. You're working for to support and provide for your family. So you're not. It's no easy ride.
Bottomless pit. That's funny. All right, Madhava Puri.
We hear spirituality often described in numerical terms. Like, for example, you mentioned Purushottam Mas being 3 times more powerful than Kartik.
Yeah, why not 4?
Okay, if it's 3 times more powerful than Kartik, then what's the numerical value of Kartik? If we say the mantra 33 times, we get the mercy of the Supreme Lord. Why 33 times?
Yeah, why not 34?
We're 10,000th the tip of the hair. Why is it 10,000th the tip of the hair? The Spirit.
That's a real thing. The other ones were good. Keep going.
3/4 spiritual, 1/4 material. What's the fundamental nature of spirit? I thought it was beyond material conception, beyond numerical value, but we hear these numerical values said many times.
Yeah.
If we're going to put a numerical value on things, then my question would be, are we not, in one sense, inflating the market? Because there's so much mercy talked about all the time, worshiping the deity, chanting. We have Purushottam month, this holiday, that holiday. So does it not lose value?
Does it not lose value?
Yeah, I mean, if we're putting it in numerical terms and there's so much mercy being...
I mean, if something is unlimited, if you put a number on it, you've reduced it.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah, if something's unlimited and then you put a number on it, why are you putting a number on it? I mean, about these numbers, because someone say, well, 33, well, not 34. I was just thinking, Prabhupada had one disciple, Guru Kripa Swami, and he was a big collector. He would, collect money, and he helped build the Vrindavan temple and whatever. So I think one time he brought Prabhupada a large sum of money. I forgot it. I think it was like 108,000, something like that. Or, back then was also, much more than it is now. Then Prabhupada said, 108,000. Prabhupada said, 109 would have been better, something like that. So, yeah, Kirtaniya Sada Hari, I mean, you could be chanting all the time. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur would recommend his disciples do 64 rounds. Now, those engaged in preaching or other services, they were exempt from that because it was considered, Kirtaniya Sada Hari was considered chanting the holy name. So they would chant, at least 16 rounds. But we are into numbers and numerical counting. Like the Goswamis would, do 1,000 obeisances of the Vaishnavas. You could say, well, why don't you do 1,001 or whatever, or why not? But it's simply a way to keep track. Also, if you talk about, okay, it's 3 more times powerful than Kartik. I mean, all of these injunctions, it's just kind of meant to get people, as far as I understand, it's meant to get people enthusiastic. Like, all right, well.
Sense of value and speciality.
Yeah, the sense of a value, speciality, to get people enthusiastic. Said, yeah, well, for the last 5 months, I haven't really been, doing as much spiritual things as I should. All right, Purushottam a month. Okay, let me go for it. So those are some. Yes.
In the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, Prabhupada gives a nice example on this exact point. Now, because we experience and think in a world of dimensions, there's length, there's breadth, there's width. We're used to measuring and seeing things. That's how we process information. So Prabhupada gives the example that we say that how is it possible all the living entities and the Supreme Lord are eternally existing, and yet Krishna comes first? So how are they all existing, Krishna and the living entity, eternally existing, yet Krishna comes first? And Prabhupada gives the example. And Prabhupada says there, because we're used to seeing things in forms and sequential and dimensions, that's the way we process information. So you give numbers like 3/4. Now the spiritual world is unlimited. How can something be 1/4 of something that's unlimited? But that's the way we process information. Generally speaking, that's human experience. So it's presenting the concepts in a way that we're used to experiencing. And the example Prabhupada gives, which I think is quite blissful. Now, we know that the sunlight depends on the sun, right? But what came first, the sun or the sunlight? Actually, they're simultaneous. As soon as you have the sunlight, you have the sun. They're simultaneously, and yet they're sequential. Wrap your mind around that. So yes, we understand that unlimited, how can you measure? But as Balaram was saying, it gives you a sense of the value of the thing. It encourages you. Just like if you say so many names of Ram, one saying of Vishnu, and then, there's that whole sequential. It gives you a sense of the value of the thing because we're used to measuring things. Does that help? Okay. And thanks, Balaram.
Thank you.
Make a good team. Good tag team.
All right, one last.
Yeah.
Saul really speaks. That's it, Saul.
Okay, Sal, go for it. Soul.
Very good.
Soul.
It was just the conception of having children, and this is what I never really heard of it. It's more, how does the Vaishnavas or Christian conscience conception on like the sense of adoption, actually, instead of conceiving children. You could still raise children, but yeah, I know one devotee said he adopted a son.
Yeah, I mean, there's different, I know some devotees, they try to have, they couldn't have children, and then they practically are just saying to themselves, well, we can't have children. I guess we better, fully dedicate ourselves to spiritual, activities. So that's like one route. Now, some people say they can't have children, and then they say, okay, well, let us adopt. So, I mean, it's benefit for that child, right? They're adopted into a devotee family, and they're trained and guided, and so, I mean, I don't think there's any injunction.
It's in the Bhagavatam.
Yeah.
Soma, isn't it? I'm trying to think where the girl was from. Some kind of yogis and an apsara, heavenly damsel, that united, but they just had birth of the child and left the child crying. And it was Soma?
Yeah.
Yeah, who came, the moon god.
Yeah.
He came and put his finger in her mouth and nurtured her and adopted her.
Yeah.
So adoption is there in the Bhagavatam.
Yeah. Or you have, anyways, there's some other examples also. Mahabharat, there's some examples of adoption. So, yeah. So, yeah, it's fortunate for the child, to be adopted by devotees. Okay, Mr. Kevin?
Yeah, I just had when we were talking about, was it Tamal Krishna Das Goswami that you were mentioning, that the conception of God? Yeah, so we have the beautiful cowherd boy with the flute who advented 5,000 years ago. But what's helped me whenever I have my doubts, because I've been interfaith for 7 years at a muddy point in my life, is that God, evam para praptam, that he advents, and then when he leaves, he has his family tree or his lineage, succession, and all the way to Srila Prabhupada, and it's personal, right? So it's you can approach God through other faiths, but he might not reveal himself. You might go through Jesus Christ, who's a bona fide spiritual master, but he advented 2,000 years ago. And I've seen a lot of Christian missionaries, they get really fired up in their late 20s and they preach for 4 to maybe 6 years, but then they just settle down and retire and just become really just karmis. But in Krishna consciousness, how can your whole life be, performing service? Oh, I can ask a question, yeah.
No, I'm trying to figure out where you're going here, where the train's going. That's how I was trying to figure out.
It's like a comment. Is it a comment you're mentioning now?
Yeah, just the personal nature where, how Krishna says to Uddhava, my spiritual master is equal to me, and so that allows this lineage to continue.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's what's inspired you, the lineage of pure succession. Yeah, that's a very inspiring element also, that having such great acharyas who we're connected to. Yeah, so we could feel very inspired about that also. All right. Okay. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.